Hello, Melissa Brown here, and I have some amazing wisdom for you on your Wednesday. We're going to do Wednesday wisdom a little bit differently today. Number one, it's pre-recorded and not a Facebook Live, but I wanted to really just be intentional about sharing with you what God dropped in my spirit today. I was having my quiet time this morning and I had a little more time than usual, so I could really just sit with God. And one of the things I love to do is incorporate not just the scriptures, but I love spiritual books. I love stories and folklore. And so, one of my favorite books that I go back to over and over again, and if you do any kind of work with women, women's empowerment, womanist literature, any of that, then I know you probably have this book in your library. If not, you should have it. I've probably had this since college. It's called Women Who Run with the Wolves. And so one of the things that I've been drawn to probably for the last year and a half is this sense of homecoming and what it means to come home to yourself. And not just that, because I'm a therapist as well, I'm very curious with the ways we lose ourselves, the ways we disconnect, as well as how you come back home. And so, one of the stories that I was reading in the book today was all about a seal. And seals travel in packs, if you know anything about seals. The other thing that I found to be really interesting about seals is they live in the ocean, so they come from the deep, but they are multifaceted in the fact that they are one of the rare creatures who live in the ocean but can abide and be out on dry ground. Now, typically, they only come out to rest, to digest their food, to birth their babies and nurture. If they are feeding their babies, the feeding baby seals, they will come out on to the ice or onto the land. But again, they are not like a typical sea creature that has to live only in the ocean. They can come in and they can come out. Now, as I'm sharing this story with you, because again, part of why I was drawn to the story is the archetypal nature of the story and the folklore in the story. And folklore, just like parables in the Bible, speaks to us on multiple levels. A parable, just like folklore, uses symbolism to talk to you about you. So, although I'm talking to you about a seal, I'm talking to you also about your soul. And it was so good this morning that I said, okay, I got to share this. And there was so much depth and richness in this parable that I may even have to do a part two of this video because it's just too much to share. Because we are just such multifaceted people. And so here's the story. Here's the parable. The parable is of, it starts with a man, actually. It starts with a man who lives in a place that's cold, it's icy, um, and he has lost a lot, and he's alone. He's alone and he's longing for some sort of connection, companionship, because it is the nature of humans to be connected. And so this man is out, goes fishing one night, and he's out on the water doing his fishing, catching nothing. And then all of a sudden, he sees these seal-like creatures. It's dark, so he can't quite tell exactly what it is, but they're seals and they are dancing in the moonlight. And all he sees is like this glimmer. All he sees is the flickering of their light, their shine, their like it's just something that's very magnetic spiritually about them. And so he is mesmerized by what he sees, partly because he's so lonely. And so he sits there in the ocean in his boat, just amazed, starstruck, if you will, at these seals. And so these seals, again, keep in mind this is folklore. So this is not really what seals do. They do come out of the water, but whether or not these particular seals in this story, they would take off what is called their seal skin. They would take off their skin and they could kind of dance around in a more spiritual way, but they only do it at night and they only do it in the moonlight. And so this man is watching this. And again, he's mesmerized by it. And he decides he wants to take one of the seals that they are female. So he wants one. Because again, he's so lonely, he can't stand the thought that he's never going to have this experience again. And so what he does, because he's like begging for, one of the seal women to stay with him. And of course, she can't. She can't stay with him, but she's entertaining him. She's entertaining and saying, no, no, I really can't. And so what he does is he takes the seal skin and holds it really close to himself and says, you have to come back with me. I absolutely have to have you. I am so lonely. I'm so alone. And I promise if you just stay with me for 7 years, if you just stay with me for 7 years, I will give you this seal skin back and you can go back with your other seals and be with your people in the deep. And so she agrees. That's a whole other story. But she agrees and she goes with him because remember, she can stay on the land. She doesn't need she's a sea creature, but she can survive not being in the sea. And so she agrees to go back to this man's home, which is not in the deep, on the land. And she keeps her commitment and she stays with him for 7 years. There's so many things that I want to bring out, just even sharing that with you, because one of the questions that I get so often from women who feel like they have lost themselves and they begin to look at the relationships or the agreements that they have made. And one of the questions that always comes up with smart, brilliant women is why me? What was it about me that made this person want me? What made them um, kind of take over my life, or why would this happen to me? It's human nature to want to know why, to want to understand why something that doesn't feel good is happening. We never ask why I'm being blessed. We never ask when life is going great and you're getting everything you desire. I've rarely heard people say, unless they have been in extreme deficit, why me? Why would this wonderful thing be happening to me? No one is saying that. But we quickly say that when things start happening in our life that we don't understand, or things that we thought would go one way go totally left, go totally another way. And one of the pieces of wisdom that I want to bring out is that darkness is always attracted to light. So if you have been in a place in your life, and we've all been there at one point or another, and you have asked the question, why me? If you have asked at some point in your life, what made your partner, what made this lonely person pick you out of all the people he could have picked? Why did he pick me? People are drawn to your light. And particularly, people whose light has gone dim is drawn to your light. I want to say also, because by the time I finish telling you at least the core part of this story, there's a whole plot twist on this. So I don't even want you to think, oh, this is about men versus women or men trying to take over women's lives. But at the same time, because of the nature of the work I do as a therapist, a life coach, a minister, I can't tell you the amount of stories that I have heard where women in particular are in their space of freedom. They doing life. They're doing them. They're enjoying themselves. They have everything ahead of them. And then all of a sudden, they make agreements to things that think it's not going to be that bad. And then next thing you know, all of their joy, all of that glow, all of the things that made them who they were, they feel like they can't even locate it anymore. So the other piece that I want to bring out just from telling you this part of the story is, and this really goes back to the why me, or how could I have agreed to that? One of the things the she brings out of this parable is that there is a purity that comes with freedom. And if you can think back to a time in your life where you were free, where you were just doing you. You weren't desperate for anything. You were just enjoying your life. You were just doing things. There is a purity that comes with that that doesn't have you um, paranoid about other people and their motives, because we tend to engage relationships based off of how we would do a relationship. And so it is not even a thought in our mind that somebody may not have good intentions for you. Not because you're stupid, not because you're not smart, but because there is purity and freedom. And for some of us, your mind don't even work that way. And again, although, I'm using terms male, female, kind of this making agreements because this man just had to have her shine, this glow, but he promises, it wasn't in a negative kind of dialogue. It wasn't in a I'm gonna hurt you and it wasn't like that. It was more of please, appealing to her sensitive, nurturing nature. That's basically what the man did. He said, I am so destitute. I am in such great need. And if you would just stay with me, I will take care of you. I will make you happy. I will do all these things. And she agrees, partly because of her pure nature to want to nurture, to want to care for, to want other people to want to or to have the freedom that she had. And I said, this is interesting that she agrees with this person and with the thought that he's going to give her, here's the thing, y'all, what she already has. That her agreement to stay with him for 7 years is for her to have what she already has. How many times have you agreed to something? How many times have you said yes to an invitation for something you already have from somebody who really don't have the capacity to give it? If you want to go biblical, you want me to go to scripture, it reminds me of Jesus being in the wilderness. And in that passage of scripture where Jesus is wandering in the wilderness, fasting for 40 days, 40 nights. So he's hungry physically. But part of what fasting is I empty myself out physically for what I can only tap into spiritually. And so the enemy, the devil takes him up to a high place in the midst of all of in the midst of all of his fasting, the enemy wants to then promise him. The enemy wants to promise him, you can have all of this if you just bow down and serve me. I will give you everything if you bow down and serve me. You will have lordship over this. I will give you rulership over this. I will let you have everything. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Jesus already has everything. And the enemy doesn't have everything, but yet he is trying to tempt him to make an agreement for something he already has. The difference between Jesus and this um, story that I'm sharing with you, because again, the seal takes off her skin and is dancing and shimmering in the light and just having a good old time. The skin, as the story moves on, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the skin as the story moves on represents her soul. The outer, that shimmer, is like they're a different part of her essence. It's still her, but it's a part of her. And so, but she takes off that part that she needs to go down in the depths, and she's in this light place. So the difference is she's making an agreement without her soul. Are you hearing what I'm saying? How many agreements have you made without the essence of your soul? You just made it from the essence of your nature. You made it from the essence of your nature to be kind, your nature to love, your nature to nurture. But you were missing your soul, which allows you to discern what you already know. And so when Jesus is in the high pinnacle and the enemy is making this promise or saying, I will give you this, I will give you that, because Jesus is fasting from the flesh, in the spirit realm, he already knows, I already have this. What you're offering me is nothing because I already have everything. What could your life be if you knew that you already had everything? What decisions could you adjust, or what agreements would you not have ever made if you knew that what was being promised you already have? The woman didn't know, the seal didn't know that what was being promised, she already had possession of. And it was in her naivete. That's what the story writer says. She says, it's not that she was stupid, she was naive. She didn't know. And there's a part of us that just doesn't know what we carry. And like the seal, you are part human and part divine. And I'm using that in the sense of there's a part of you that can dwell in the earth, but there's a part of you that belongs, your dwelling place is the spirit realm. You belong in the ocean. You belong in a deeper place. And here she is making agreements to be out of her habitat. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. And the story goes on to say that she does it for 7 years. But in the 7 years that she can't go back to the ocean, that she's there with him, keeping him not lonely, keeping him company, loving on him, nurturing him, she is being depleted. She's being depleted. Her skin is changing. She's starting to get dry. She's starting to get brittle. The eyes, and if you know a seal, the seals have eyes that look like our eyes, dark and deep. Her eyes are starting to become dim because she's been out of her habitat too long. That gave me pause. Let me just tell you, I had to close the book and sit there and just think, not just for the women that I get to serve, but even for my own life of how long you've been out of your habitat. And many of us, we're just hoping for a break. We want a break. Can I tell you that a break is not the same as a breakthrough? She uses the language in the book when she starts to kind of break down the meaning of the story. She said, you know, we settle for vacations, but what you really need is refuge. What you really need is home. What you really need is to go back to the deep place where you belong. You were never meant to be out on the land for that long. And sometimes we nurture other people until we are brittle and dry and can't see. And I love the fact that because it is in our nature as women to nurture, I love the fact that she says, it's not that nurturing is bad, it is that it should not require you no longer nurture yourself. And that there are times, just like a seal, where you got to go get back in the water. I'm just out here to feed you. I'm just out here to rest. I don't live out here. And understand this, there is a cost to staying away from home too long. It costs. There are consequences when you allow yourself to stay out of the water for too long when that's where you live. And so I'm going to just let you sit with that because again, my quiet time this morning went long because I really needed to sit and think with that. And I want you to know it's not just relationships. It's not just relationships that drain us or cause us to make agreements that maybe we should not make. She relates it to corporate world, making promises of I'm gonna give you a life and I'm gonna give you this. Yeah, let me give y'all the plot twist that really messed me up. Like I said, and then I'll have to do part two, maybe Friday, maybe another later this week. Let me let you digest this. What she goes on to say, because keep in mind that archetype literature, folklore kind of literature, parables are symbols of us. She says that the seal, I already told you that the skin of the seal, seal skin is really soul skin. And the old man who takes the soul scan, she said, is really our ego. That thing right there, psh, I was done. I said, so it's not really a man, even though some of us know a man like that, but it's your ego. And I said, God, if that ain't the truth, because I think it is in Romans 8 that talks about how the spirit and the flesh are at war. They are constantly in opposition to one another. They are at war. And what the spirit wants, the flesh opposes. They are in opposition to itself. And so while the man is taking the seal skin because the man only wants what he wants, isn't that just like the ego? It just wants what it wants. But there is a spirit part of you that dances in the moonlight. There is a spirit part of you that knows there is nothing that you need that you don't already have. The issue is who's in charge. And I said, when I think about it, there have been many agreements that I have made, not with a physical man, but with my ego. What my ego just had to have, what my ego promised me, what my ego said, just 7 years. And girl, I'm going to set you up nice when I'm already set up nice. That's what the spirit said. But when the ego is turned up high, when the voice of your flesh is turned up high, you won't even hear the spirit. I hope y'all are tracking what I'm saying. Here's what I want you to think about today. I want you to think about the part of you that dances in the moonlight. And for some of you, you have been kidnapped for so long, you can't even remember that part of you. Maybe you ain't seen that part of you since you was 6 years old. You know, the girl that used to just twirl and do cartwheels and dance and be curious and sing at the top of her lungs. Where's she at? And where have you sold yourself short? Where have you made an agreement? Maybe with a physical person, but maybe with the egocentric part of yourself that said, girl, just play this role. Just do this. And then I'm going to set you up, and that's how you're going to get a promotion. And that's how you're going to get this. And all of these deals, where have you made a deal with yourself that costs you too much? Costs you too much. What is the price that you have paid that you never thought you were going to pay? Come on now. Sit with any woman over 50 years old who has any kind of self-reflection skills, and she'll be able to tell you about what it costs. And in some cases, what it's still costing. But the good news is you can come home. I'll have to come back on and share with you how the story ends. But I wanted to just share this part of the story because I could feel it in my soul skin. And my prayer for you is that it does make you think about the places you stopped dancing, the things that you've given up so you could go nurture lonely people, so you could go meet another need. And in the process, you didn't know you'd lose your own magic. You didn't know your eyes would start being dim, and then your skin would get brittle. I'll just share this last part just so I won't leave you hanging. The woman begins to hear her name being called because, of course, 7 years passes and the man don't want to give her what he promised because he used to it now. He like, we good now. And she like, no, I'm dying. And she hears her name being called. and she knows where the seal skin is. Because remember, he holding it. He said he'd give it back in 7 years. Some things you don't, people ain't gonna give back. Some things you got to take back. So I'll just leave that there with the questions that I want you to sit with on this Wednesday that is full of wisdom. And I pray that if you hear your name being called, you'll answer. Sending you love, sending you grace. Let me know your takeaway from this wisdom story. And feel free to share with a sister who needs to hear it. Love you guys. Bye bye.